Is it? Have you ever heard of the Gell-Man amnesia effect?
No, what's
Yeah.
that?
Wait, have you really?
No, I've never heard of that.
This is a
Oh,
bit. You're
there's
amnesiaing us right now.
it's basically it's like this concept that like you open a newspaper basically, and you're like, oh wow, that's really interesting. You turn the page, wow, that's really cool, interesting. Then you turn the page, and it's a topic that you know a lot about, and you're like,
Hmm.
oh my god, everything in here is just so wrong. This is I can't believe they would publish such garbage. And then you turn the page, you're like, oh wow, this is really interesting, right? It's funny that for a lot of people, they'll have an experience with like a streamer or YouTube. This happens with people that watch me even, like we're like, oh man, like I agree with Destiny and everything. He's like the smartest dude in the world. He knows so much stuff. And then I'll start talking about something that's like, wait, hold on, I'm a mechanical engineer. You just said what? Wait, do you know anything about what you're talking about? And then like, yeah, and sometimes it'll change people's views of streamers and YouTubers a little bit. It's like, well, when he started talking about shit that I knew a lot about, I realized that his knowledge is actually way more limited than I thought. And then some people will just choose to ignore it and like, oh, never mind, he's cool otherwise. As long as he's not talking about my shit, he knows exactly what he's talking
Do you
about.
know who the perfect?
Yeah.
Do you know who the perfect person for that is?
Oh.
Elon Musk.
Oh man. Oh no. Elon. Okay, Elon is a hard one. Elon is a hard one because he contends. He has the two worst types of people on the internet are Elon fanboys and Elon haters. Okay, these are the two most religiously, militantly horrible people of groups of people on the internet.
Yeah.
I view Elon Musk in a very simple light. I think he seems to be like a pretty decent businessman. Seems like he was at one point, I think, like an okayish engineer, or like at least knows how to talk to them, and then that's it. But yeah, sometimes it feels like Elon thinks that he can start making these like very deep, very profound statements across all sorts of technologies and all sorts of industries. It's like, okay, dude, like, chill out. Okay. Tesla and rockets are cool, but I don't know how much you know about like fucking machine learning and AI. Like, do you really need to be giving a speech on this right now? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was talking about like Tesla full self-driving is going to finally be done like at the end of the fucking year and everyone's going to be jumping into it or some shit. Like I was reading well, the thing that ruined the whole like Elon thing for me, like the whole reason where I was like, it's kind of like weird when he started doing that tunnel project underneath like Vegas. He's like,
The boring
yeah, let's
company.
just make these tunnels. And then I looked at the tunnels. I'm like, first off, there's like no emergency exits in case a fire starts. And then he brings like
the hell traps I've seen, yeah.
and then he brings the Teslas driving it, and I'm like, man, a lithium-ion battery with that much of a charge setting on fire inside a tunnel like that, I don't know. It seems like a fucked up idea. But but he does so many things that work. Like from what I understand, SpaceX, love that fucking company because it just seems like they really don't do anything wrong. And then like at the same time, the same guy who owns SpaceX also owns like a fucking tunnel project that doesn't. It's like, so you just made like subways for Teslas. Like, okay.
Well, we're significantly worse subways, for being honest, right?
Significantly worse subways for Teslas. But I don't know. For me, like Elon is like any other billionaire. I don't understand like the defense squad that jumps for him because it's like I look at Elon the same way I look at people like Jeff Bezos and everyone, right? Where I'm like, you're just like a different class of person. I don't really know if I can associate. It's like anytime people are like, Trump's just like one of us. I'm like, yeah, you mean a multi-billionaire with like his own like, fucking property companies and everything. That's the average guy to you, right? I'm like, what world do you fucking live in where that's the average Andy? But that's the same whole vibe I get out of Elon. Like he'll make 1 billion claims and it's just like,
I don't know. I could forgive Elon more because he's funny.
That is true. He's really like
he's
the
so
whole
hilarious.
The Twitter things like fucking sent so many like things like on a spiral. I don't know if he's even going to be able to purchase Twitter like for 44 billion.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
Well, now it's starting to seem like he was never going to,
but
that can't be possible. Like, because it seems like there's got to be, because he owned a decent amount of shares prior to his supposed acquisition, right? That's got to be illegal. And I think the SEC is looking into that. You can't just like, you can't drive a company's value up that much. They're like, I'm not going to buy actually, but I am going to make a fuck ton of money off the news that I like fomented or whatever. Like, it's a little insane.
He's been doing that for years, though. And it's the one thing with the SEC, and the thing that I always get jaded about, and this, like, we'll go back to that Save the Kid stuff. The U.S. legal system both gives me, like, a lot of joy and a lot of sadness because... So for crypto, right? Like one of the things that pisses me off is when we were covering like a lot of those gambling scams, right? Like all those gambling sites and everything, and just crypto pump and dumps that all these influencers are doing, like fucking Tana Mongeau.
Damn, I need to do one of these, dude. There's so much money to be made from you guys. I'm talking to you, the audience, you morons. You can fucking steal so much money from you guys.
Well, it's interesting because there was so much shit on them. Like there was a period of time where that's all anybody was doing, and there was like no.
That period of time is right now still.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's like the federal government wasn't looking into it, but now there's like more and more crypto task force that are made by the FBI, the IRS, the SEC, the IRS especially, and FinCEN, where it's like if you're getting into it now, like now they're starting to like do a whole like they're starting to like look into all the micro influencers that were doing it, because it used to be like, you know, John McAfee was doing something, but John McAfee versus influencer is very different because John McAfee's like a fucking billionaire and shit, right? Like this is like a big guy, like, you know, at the top, you know, versus fucking LA influencer scumbag that's like very much low end. Like Jake Paul, for all of our like, you know, circle is, he's not as big as like a multi-billionaire doing an ICO scheme.
Yeah.
But once you've taken down enough of those billionaires, then you can refocus your assets down to like the smaller people and start working there. So obviously now, if you're an influencer doing it, you're under the fucking crosshairs. And I can only imagine like the people that were really pushing it a year ago are going to face like super serious like jail time, because it is like straight up like full on manipulation. Like it's going to land you hardcore into that white collar crime area. So it's going to be fun seeing it now. It's going to be interesting seeing how like a lot of those streamers like XQC, you know, Trainwrecks, who for instance were doing that gambling, right? Like the offshore gambling with like Stake and various other websites, how they're going to get away with it. Like I know for Trainwrecks and even for XQC, like the way that they were handling it was that they were doing it in Canada, or they were like they were like playing from countries where it was still a gray market area. But for any influencer that was like doing it in the United States via VPN and funneling that to like US players, that's what's going to be interesting, seeing them get busted down the road when like those hammers start getting clamped down. Because if it's one thing I've ever learned about the US government, they do not give a shit about enforcing the law until when you talk to a federal agent and you tell them how much money is being taken out of the United States financial system. Like if you can tell them Uncle Sam lost how much money to like a criminal, then they fucking give a shit. Like they don't have any moral authority to stop bad guys. They don't give a fuck about that. Like this is the same country that'll create bad guys all the time. But if they find out that their money is like going en masse to the bad guys without like their control on it, that's when it's over. That's when like, you know, they'll actually bring the fucking claws out. And that's like the only thing that gives me like somewhat of a joy. The United States can give a lot of shit about enforcing legality. Like they can do, they have the tools to do the right things, but it's literally only money that'll get them to do the right thing. And sometimes like you can use that to your advantage, right? Like for me, I don't like seeing people get scammed on the internet, period. I don't like people like, the thing that I've always hated about like any of these crypto things when it came from influencers, like it was always hyper rich influencers, like rich guys that were trying to find a way to like just siphon money out of their fan bases. And anytime that I would criticize them, like the influencer that I would criticize, like, are you just jealous? Like, I'm like, there's no jealousy there. Like, we're all well off. Like, we all have our assets in place. You're just a greedy fuck that wants to like bite like the people that are supporting you or the people that put you to where you're at. That's the really shady thing. That's like ethically so fucked. Like it's not about it's just ethics wise, you're an actual immoral fucking monster. It's like, you know, I don't know.
I can't believe you guys didn't believe that I knew what the Gell-Man effect was.
No, I knew what you knew because every time.
I like Michael Crichton a lot, and I believe that's he has like a quote where he explained it in like the late 90s or something like that. But I forget. My dad also loves Michael Crichton.